Hey folks, this is Kalani. There have been some crazy changes this week. We have a massive round of balance tuning. With 3 weeks of Season 1 data in their hands, the dev team are making some big moves. So we have plenty of class changes, buffs and nerfs to go over. The 11.05 PTR has some cool new updates, including a change to how transferring currencies between your alts works, some super easy ways to catch up with your gear, and that patch will probably be releasing sooner than you think. And then there are also some other oddities like the character restoration service coming back online. There's a lot to talk about, so let's break it all down in this week's WoW news video. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Let's kick things off with the huge round of class changes, buffs and nerfs that are coming with the next weekly reset. So all of these changes will go live on Tuesday, October 8th for NA realms, or the Wednesday for EU realms, and they are going to be quite significant. For Death Knights, the Sand Lane hero talent tree will be buffed up for blood specifically, so Vampiric Strike damage is up 30%, Infliction of Sorrow was buffed up to 20% when it extends duration, and 130% when it consumes diseases. Visceral Strength now grants 12% strength for 12 seconds, up from 8% for 8 seconds, and Frenzied Bloodthirst increases the damage of Death Strike by 6% per stack, up from 5% per stack, so Sand Lane should be far more powerful for blood decays going forward. Havoc Demon Hunters will see some big buffs to the Aldrachi Reaver hero talent tree, including a 100% damage boost to Wounded Quarry and Warblaze Hunger, and a 15% damage boost to Reaver's Glaive. For Vengeance, their mastery is getting buffed up 20%, Shattered Soul's healing was buffed up to 7% of recent damage, up from 6%, and Soul Barrier will see a 50% increase to its absorb value, and the value per soul was increased by 100%, so Aldrachi Reaver may be more appealing for Havoc, and Vengeance should be a bit tankier as well. Moving on to the Druids, Feral has some quick buffs for Wild Stalker. The chance for Bloodseeker Vines to grow on a single target remains unchanged, but there will be an increased chance when Rip and Rake are on multiple targets. Bursting growth damage was also increased by 10%. And then Restoration has even more buffs this week. They're getting a 5% healing increase across the board for all of their abilities, and a further 40% buff to Cenarian Ward's healing. So hopefully this is the final push Resto Druids need to catch up to everyone else. The Evokers are up next, and Augmentation has a quick nerf to Blistering Strikes. The armor bonus is being reduced down to 20% of your armor, so your tanks won't be quite as tanky with an Aug Evoker in the group. Devastation will see a 25% buff to Consume Flame, but a 20% damage reduction for Engulf in PvP combat. Preservation's Engulf healing was increased by 20%, but Consume Flame's healing was reduced by 50%, so a bit of give and take with the Flame Shaper hero talent this week. Hunters also made the list this week, and Beast Mastery will see a pretty significant nerf to its single target damage. Their bonus damage from Basilisk Collar is being reduced down to 2 and 4%, down from 5 and 10%, so that is a massive nerf to their single target damage potential. This change was actually earmarked for the 11.05 PTR, but I guess the dev team didn't want to wait, so this change is coming through next week as well. To slightly offset those nerfs, kill command damage has been increased by 18%, and all pet damage has been increased by 4%. For survival, their 2-set bonus is getting buffed up to 8%, and their 4-set is being buffed up to 20%, so survival should do quite a bit better with their 4-set equipped. Mages are up next, and the Frostfire hero talent tree is getting some big buffs. Frostfire bolt damage is up 15%, Frostfire infusion damage has been increased by 50%, Frostfire empowerment damage bonus has been increased up to 60%, and then Frost Mastery has been doubled and will grant 2% mastery up from 1%. I'll be interested to see if this is enough to shake things up and get the mages off of Sun Fury or Spellslinger for at least a little bit. Moving on to the monks, Mastery of Harmony's Stored Vitality causes an additional 40% healing and damage, up from 25%. For Brewmaster specifically, Coalescence now causes Aspect of Harmony to increase damage and healing taken by 20%. Chi Wave and Chi Burst deals 100% increased damage, up from 50%. Overwhelming Force increased up to 20% from 15%, and Balanced Stratagem increased damage up to 5% from 3%. For Mistweaver, Coalescence was buffed up to 30% damage and healing taken, and Aspect of Harmony stores 30% of healing up from 20%. And then Windwalker has an interesting change for Conduit of the Celestials. Celestial Conduit now scales its damage with your mastery, so you should be able to get a bit more damage out of that moving forward. Now, Paladins have a long list of changes this week, starting with Holy. They're going to see a 5% nerf to their healing across the board, so that's not super ideal, but they also have quite a few changes to Lightsmith. Awakening now spawns a sacred weapon when extending Avenging Wrath, Hammer and Anvil's healing effect radius was increased up to 20 yards, and its healing was increased by 150%, and then Divine Guidance's effect was increased by 50% as well. Protection Paladins are going to see a very nice 6% buff across the board for all abilities. Word of Glory healing was increased by 20%, Light of the Titans now heals over 10 seconds down from 15, Faith in the Light duration was increased to 6 seconds up from 5, and then Lightsmith has a bunch of changes too. Sacred Weapon damage and healing was increased by 30%, Forge's Reckoning damage was increased by 30%, Blessed Assurance damage bonus was buffed up to 200% up from 100%, Divine Guidance damage and healing was increased by 50%, Hammer and Anvil damage is up 40%, and Sanctification grants 2% increased primary stat up from 1%, so a lot of buffs for Protection Paladin this week. It doesn't stop there though. Retribution also has a bunch of adjustments for Templar. Shake the Heavens lasts 10 seconds up from 8, Sanctification duration increased to 12 seconds up from 10, Final Reckoning increases the damage of Hammer of Light by 30% up from 15%, Hammer of Light main target damage was increased by 25%, and secondary target damage was increased by 75%, so that's going to be dealing a lot more damage, especially in cleave or AoE situations. Light's Deliverance will trigger at 50 stacks down from 60, so you'll get those free hammers more often. Undisputed Ruling grants 15% haste for 8 seconds, up from 12% haste for 6 seconds. Wrathful Descent now deals 125% of the Empyrean Hammer damage to nearby enemies, up from 100%, and Empyrean Hammer now benefits from Penitence and Burn to Ash. So some huge buffs for the Templar hero talent tree for Retribution specifically. We'll probably see a lot more Paladins opt for the big Hammer talent set with these buffs in play. Shadow Priests join the list of specs getting big buffs this week too. Mind Blast, Shadower Death, Void Bolt, and Shadowy Apparition damage are all being increased by 10%, and then for Void Weaver specifically, Entropic Rift damage is being buffed up by 10%, Void Blast damage is up 20%, Collapsing Void is being increased by 10%, Void Flay damage is also up 10%, and then Inner Quietus damage bonus was increased up to 25%. So Shadow should be doing at least a little bit more damage moving forward. Moving on, we come to the Rogues. For Assassination, Caustic Spatter poison damage to nearby targets was reduced down to 40% from 45%, their 2-set bonus had its chance to trigger increased, and their 4-set bonus will now trigger upon gaining 5 stacks down from 6. Outlaw Rogue is going to get a 4% damage bonus across the board, Dispatch damage has been increased by 6% on top of that, and then Precise Cut's bonus to Blade Flurry damage was increased up to 4% per missing target, up from 2%. Now, Shamans also made the list this week, but not for good reasons, I'm afraid. Thankfully, the nerfs don't seem too bad. Earthen Harmony now causes Earth Shield to reduce damage taken by 3% down from 5%, and then Acid Rain damage was reduced by 20%. So a couple of nerfs for Resto Shaman, but it definitely could have been a lot worse. Demonology Warlocks are coming in hot with a couple of quick buffs. Pact of the Arid Ruin Doom Guards deal 20% increased damage. Grimoire Felguard now increases the damage of the summoned Felguard by 60% up from 45%. Felguard damage has been increased by 10%, and Gloomhound's Gloom Slash damage is being increased by 20% too. And then last but not least, we come to the Warriors. Colossus Arterial Bleed is being buffed up to 3% per stack, up from 2% per stack. No Stranger to Pain is being buffed up to 20%, up from 15%. And then for Mountain Thane, Lightning Strikes damage has been increased by 25%. Ground Current is being buffed by 25% too. And then Thorim's Might causes Lightning Strikes to generate 3 rage down from 5. For Slayer, Culling Cyclone bonus Bladestorm damage was reduced down to 10%, and Opportunist was nerfed down to a 20% bonus from 30%. For Fury specifically, Tier 2 set bonus was buffed up to 15%, their 4 set bonus was buffed up to 20%, Crashing Thunder causes Thunderclap to generate 8 rage up from 5, Strength of the Mountain was buffed up to a 30% bonus, and Thorim's Might will increase Raging Blow and execute damage by 25% up from 15. And then there's a quick nerf for Mountain Thane for protection, Thunder Blast will generate 8 rage down from 10. So we've got some massive buffs for the underperforming specs, but especially some of the currently lackluster hero talent sets, so that should hopefully shake up the meta at least a little bit, and then various well-performing specs were knocked down a peg or two as well. These changes will go live with the next weekly reset, so they aren't like the PTR changes that we've previewed recently. You will be able to play with these buffs and nerfs very soon. Speaking of the PTR, there are some cool new updates to talk about this week, starting with a neat little change to the currency tab. Up at the top, there's going to be a new drop-down menu that allows you to see all Warband transferable currencies that your other characters may have. This then allows you to select those currencies and transfer them to a character that doesn't already have that currency. This is going to be a great quality of life change because on live servers right now, you cannot transfer a currency that your character hasn't already gotten. So if you wanted to transfer Kedge, for example, you would have to earn at least 1 Kedge before you could transfer the amount you want, because you would need to earn it for it to pop up in your currency tab. The same goes for any other transferable currency, but with this new drop-down menu, you'll be able to transfer a currency to yourself even if you haven't seen it or if you haven't gotten it yet on that character. It's going to be a great change in my opinion, and it makes Warband currencies so much easier to use. The 20th anniversary event is also shaping up quite well. Most of the pieces seem to be present and testable on the PTR, including all of the minigames and the various new rewards we'll be able to chase after. But as we get a clearer picture of the new event, it's becoming even more evident that it can be used to quickly catch up with your gearing. There are 5 weekly quests that ask you to take part in various activities. One of them rewards you with 597 gear, and 4 of them will reward you with a box of gear that contains 597 champion gear and a restored coffer key for the first box, and then veteran for everyone after the first. All of these activities are also very easy, so that's 2 pieces of champion gear and 3 pieces of veteran gear that you can get per week without really doing anything special. All of these weekly quests also reward you with crests and Valor Stones to let you upgrade this gear up to item level 606 quite easily. Now curiously, these quests were actually changed very recently. They used to all reward you with 597 champion gear, but I guess for some reason the dev team thinks getting 4 or 5 pieces of easy champion gear a week is too lucrative of a reward, so we've been bumped down to 2 champion and then the rest are veteran. What do you think of this nerf? Would 4 to 5 pieces of easy champion gear a week have been too much and too easy? It is quite a bit more than what we've had access to recently, but delves make gearing up very easy in general in the War Within, especially for solo content players. But I am very curious what you think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Now on top of all of that weekly gear, the event raid will drop actual raid item level gear too, so up to 619 from the last boss of the raid on heroic mode. I also can't imagine that the dev team would make this raid harder than the Nerebar Palace raid, so whether you want to just quickly clear through on LFR for the quests and achievements, or push up into normal and heroic mode, this event is going to be pretty good for gearing up any of your alts that you haven't gotten around to yet. But it's also going to be great for leveling as well. During the event, we'll have a passive, always active 10% bonus to XP and rep gains, so that's going to be very handy, but then we can also pick up another 10% bonus for completing a quick daily quest, and that buff is going to last for 12 hours. So 12 hours of a 20% bonus to XP gains that will help you level very quickly, but because this event lasts for so long, it will also overlap with the Darkmoon Faire several times, giving you another 10% bonus to XP and rep gains. If you add in the Warband mentor bonus for having 5 max level characters, we'll have up to 55% bonus experience during the WoW anniversary event, making it the perfect time to level up any alts that have been left behind. So whether you want to level up some alts or do some easy rep farming, the 20th anniversary event is going to make everything so much easier and faster. If you want to learn a bit more about the 20th anniversary event, I'll have a link in the comments below to a video that goes over the entire thing. I guess while we're on the topic of the Darkmoon Faire, it's also prudent to mention that the fair is currently in town, so if you've got any leveling you might want to do before the patch, or rep farming that you just want an extra boost for, be sure to pop by the Darkmoon Faire to get your buffs before you head out on your adventures. And then the last bit of news that we have for this week is a bit of a weird one, but I figure it could be very important for a few folks. The character restoration option is once again available, so if you've deleted some characters in the near past that you'd like to get back, you should be able to recover any of those lost souls from your character select screen. As an added bonus, the dev team have also removed the 7-day cooldown on restoring a character for a limited time, so if you have a lot of characters you haven't been able to restore due to the feature being disabled and you just randomly decided to delete a whole bunch of stuff, well, now's your time. You have until October 15th when that 7-day cooldown goes back into effect. But that's all of the news that we have for this week, so that's it for this video. What do you think of the crazy number of big buffs and nerfs coming next week? And how do you feel about free champion gear from the 20th anniversary event? Is 597 gear too much or not enough of a reward? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can find links in the description or click the join button just below the video. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you're always kept up to date. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.